evening, ladies and gentlemen. All between Fred, my brother. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Drinking water, which is unusual for me, but what the hell? You gotta give your liver a break sometime.
Right. In studio today, Joel Hoekstra, one of the hardest working men in show business. You know, there's certain people like when we had Michael Sweet on, I'm like, okay, there's a few people, Joel Hoekstra, Michael Sweet, George Lynch, and Portnoy. I would have a panic attack if I saw their schedule book. You know what I mean? I literally like,
Yeah.
do they have time to sleep? You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. But absolutely, Fred, do the honors and let's introduce Mr. Hope.
Yeah, I'll make this sweet, short and sweet. Our guest this evening, as Vince just told you, is Joel Hoekstra. Can be best described as a hired sharpshooter on guitar, having played with some of the biggest musicians in the industry, which include Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Michael Sweet, Night Ranger, Foreigner, Accept, Vinny Appice, Whitesnake, and Cher, just to name a few. Plus, he has his own solo project called 13. He's been on Broadway and is part of the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camps. So obviously, we have a lot to talk about tonight. It's our pleasure to welcome to Creativity Talking, Joel Hoekstra.
Joel, what's happening, man?
Hey, what's happening? Thank you so much for
Hello,
taking the
Joel.
Yeah, so today we have a Chicago show. It's always great to talk to local Chicagoans. And what's really cool is you worked at a music store, Pro-Am Music, in Downers Grove on Fairview and 75th. And I probably talked to you 1,000 times in the music store. And that's just cool to see. Yeah, and, you know, and then with like when, you know, I had a teacher named Hoekstra who taught me. I'm dyslexic and was part of that whole thing of, you know, being cool and understanding that you're not an idiot because the words don't look right. And so I always thought you were related. I know you're not now, but so that was like, we're always cheering you on, you know, to see the Chicago guy do good. You know what I mean? And always cool because we grew up, we had Ides of March and like, and then to learn that you came up through Petrick and World Stage and the whole nine. Like Chicago has a really cool set of musicians, and you're one of them. And you represent Chicago, man, when you go out, and you always represent us well. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I spent the majority of my life there. Even still, I mean, I've accrued a lot of time now in New York City, but you know, you can't take the Chicago out of the guy for sure. You know, especially when it comes to sports. It's such a big sports town, man. You know, I can't come out here and suddenly switch over to rooting for the Knicks after what the Bulls and Knicks through, etc. Never gonna happen. Yeah, I was out. You're showing the slides, and when I got to do that. And in downtown Chicago not all that long ago, a handful of years ago or whatever, and some of the '85 Bears were there and a part of that, and that was so cool. And I think, you know, they're looking at me with the long hair, and I'm like, man, you guys were the greatest defense of all time. I know your entire lineup and blah blah blah. And it was just so cool to hang with those guys. We had the same like dressing area for the event and hanging out, and so yeah, that was a thrill for me to get to spend some time with those guys that day.
Now, you know what's cool with that? Like if you're from Chicago, like you know how everyone's, you know, you heard growing up, where were you when JFK was shot? Everyone can tell you where they were when the Bears played the Super Bowl. Like that day, it was a blizzard that day. It was like 28 inches full of snow. I'm coming home at the end of the night after the Super Bowl party, and just randomly on the corner is a big refrigerator box with Fridge's number on. What was it, 72 or whatever?
Yeah.
But like that was such a like marking moment for Chicago because we always got, you know, made fun of everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
Did it was big, and it had come the year after the, you know, despite growing up in the southwest suburbs where those that don't know, north side you're supposed to be a Cubs fan, south side you're supposed to be a Sox fan.
Yeah.
But the Cubs were on TV every day, so I became a Cubs fan, you know, when I was a kid, just because, well, hey, WGN, you know, back in the days where you had to change the channel by, you know,
absolutely.
Rabbit ears. I'm showing how old I am, but you know, I had GN, so you know there were the Cubs every day, and you know, much to my dad's dismay, he was a big White Sox fan. I became a Cubs fan. So that 84 year where they, back in the Stone Ages when it was best of 5 to make the World Series and they won the first 2 against the Padres.
Yeah.
Probably went up to San Diego and lost 3 straight. Got knocked out. It was heartbreaking. I mean, I was just talking
remember
about
that day.
somebody, and I actually went to game 2 at Wrigley. So like when they had gone up 2-0, it was like, everybody was freaking out.
Right.
The series, couldn't believe it. That year felt so magical. And then it was like, the carriage turned back into a pumpkin, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I'm a Cub fan too. That was a tough one for us. And
that was
we just had the anniversary of the first night game back in '88, and I was at that game. It got rained out, so they technically didn't call it the first night game. But I said, "Damn it, I was there. I was in the bleachers. I was there. I'm saying it was the first night game. 8/8/88. I remember that.
That's so cool. That year somehow felt more devastating than 2003 when, the Bartman thing happened. I mean, they were up 3-1. That team was really cool, but it was like a team where they added like, Kenny Lofton, et cetera, Ramos Ramirez, I think at the time. And it was like, suddenly it was like, oh, they got a chance to go here. But it didn't have that. 84 just felt like a magical year where all year long, they just had it, and it was like, oh, they're going to do it this year, And anyway, 2003 was devastating too, though. So thanks.
So where were you? Where were you in 16 when they finally won it? Were you in Chicago or were you elsewhere?
I was in TSO rehearsals, Trans-Siberian Orchestra rehearsals, and so like the beginning of it here. No, I was in New York. Actually, I have an amazing story about 2003 that was like, the way the Cubs seem like cosmically aligned with my life sometimes. I went down to Mexico to this resort, right? And it was one of these resorts where you didn't even have a TV in your room. And I was immediately sussing out, okay, Cubs are up 3-1. I got to find a place to watch the Cubs. And they had this, like, I guess, I don't know, entertainment community center of the place in Mexico, the resort, where there was a big screen TV. Go in there, and there's this giant marlin next to the TV. And, of course, they were playing the Marlins. And I went, that's a bad omen.
That's a bad sign.
And I proceeded to, down in Mexico, watch the Cubs blow 3 in a row down there and watch that whole thing unfold. And I was like, I couldn't believe it, man. So many objects have been destroyed over the years in the name of I would say, thank God for Michael Jordan, man. He kept us all sane,
Every morning I wake up and I thank Michael Jordan for making bald guys cool. Thank you, Michael. All right, I got a couple other Chicago-centric stories, and then we'll go on to the bigger world. Portillo's or Al's Beef?
I had Portillo's closer to me where I lived in the burbs, and I lived in a lot of different suburbs there. I mean, I grew up in Orland Park, but I did live in some of the other ones in that region, like let's see, post GIT when I went back from LA to the Chicago area, it was like Crestwood, Oak Forest. God, some of them are going to elude me, but eventually kind of settled in Darien.
Okay.
That is really where I think Pro-Am was. I think Pro-Am.
Yeah, it's right on the corner there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be considered Darien. Yeah.
I think technically Darien, but that had Pro-Am. That was a big part of what helped me keep my career alive. Was that store had a lot of activity. Big store. I was teaching 70 students a week there. Right. And, of course, when you teach, you can always kind of take off if you have a gig. And I mean, if I was trying to survive off of what I was initially making, playing bars occasionally on weekends and stuff like that, I never had the opportunity to get this far. So, having that teaching foundation and getting out and being able to do gigs and kind of moving up the ladder. And you mentioned Peterick, that was like falling into Kathy Richardson's band there locally, who, she sings with Jefferson Starship and is an amazing singer. And she had a great following with her local band. That was, a great gig at the time for me to to have, and like, you know, it was kind of the first time locally anybody cared who I was, if that makes sense, you know. And
Right,
then
right. Yeah.
I feel like nationally that happened with Night Ranger, you know, but
Yeah.
playing in Peter Rick's stage band, those that don't know Jim Peterick, you know, he founded the Ides of March and wrote Vehicle when he was really young. And then, you know, of course, founded Survivor and wrote all those amazing hits in that band, you know, Eye of the Tiger and High on You, Search is Over, etc. I mean, you know, a lot of hits.
Special, you know.
Yeah, okay, co-wrote those 38 special hits and Heavy Metal with Sammy Hagar. I mean, Jim's a prolific writer.
He played that on the show last week. And after he played, like he played a little bit, and then I stopped and I wasn't speaking, and he just looked at me like, "What?" I'm like, "Dude, hold on, I'm still having a heart attack that you played Heavy Metal on my show." Like, that's totally cool, you know.
Yeah, I mean, really, in a large way. I mean, so there's been a lot of steps, and it's never fair to really ever, you know, discount. You know, Kathy gave me my start locally, really, you know, and but Jim was the guy eventually who played kind of a larger role in that, because being in his house band for those world stage gigs. These would happen basically annually, like once a year. There was one night, you know, Performing Arts Center or whatever, where Jim would have guests, and you would play their songs. They would come out and, you know, sing 2-3 songs or whatever. And so I got to play with a lot of national, like, famous people through that, and being a local Chicagoan at the time. And Jim would still have me in even after I had gone to New York, which is a story unto itself, to play with these people. And so, you know, Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon, Don Barnes from 38 Special, Rick Emmett from Triumph, Kip Winger, Alan Parsons. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's like a huge, so it's kind of like an amazing thing, you know, you're getting this opportunity to back these people up when, you know, essentially nobody knew anything about me, or, you know.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I give Jim a lot of credit for really being the guy who gave me my start, because without that, it doesn't happen. You know, one of the people that was there every year was Kelly Kagi from Night Ranger, and that ultimately led to me getting an opportunity to play with Night Ranger. So just kind of, I became known as the guy when I was doing it still when I lived in New York, as the guy who would, these were like monster shows. It was very Peterick, you know, like 35 songs kind of thing. You know? So while I was out here, I'd be running these 35 songs over and over and over and over. And I'd fly in the day of the show, because I was playing in Love Janice out here at the time, and days off were like, you know, a big deal, like getting, you know, window. So I'd fly back, get off the plane, and play these shows. And Kelly took note of that, I think. And when, you know, it kind of became clear that Jeff was gone from the band, Jeff Watson. And they had Reb kind of working with them. And I kind of got in Kelly's face a little bit that night when we hung out and said, "Hey, man, how come you didn't call me?" You know, and you know, I'd be really good with you guys, et cetera, et cetera. And it turned out, like, not long after that, Reb told them, "Hey, I need to miss a show because Winger's got a gig." And I think at the time they were looking at maybe like, geez, what do we do? Do we pull the plug on this show? Do we do it just one guitar? And Kelly was like, you know, I know this guy that plays a Jim Peterick who comes in and he's got like 35 songs together. We won't even have to rehearse with him. He'll just get off the plane and get up on stage with us and play the game. And so that's kind of, you know, how that goes. And then, so that was really my audition with Night Ranger. I mean, I met Jack Blades, and I had met them before. Kathy Richardson's band had opened for Night Ranger, but I got to meet, you know, like basically in Detroit Baggage Claim. There was like a gig at a casino in Michigan. It was like going down to Baggage Claim. "Hi, how are you? I'll be playing a gig with you tomorrow." And you know, to say I was nervous would be a huge understatement. You know, I was like,
absolutely. And it seems like, but you got lucky with the type of people you got to associate with.
Yeah, you know, that was just a great thing with Night Ranger. You know, I'm very grateful that they gave me my break, just like Jim did. You know, I mean, joining them, they were kind of hiring an unknown guitar player, right? So I mean, they could have tried to go with a name guy, but I think the fact that I could do the 8-finger thing I had a lot going for me with that, and I had naturally playing a gold top Les Paul as my main guitar. You know, I just, in the blonde hair, I guess, and maybe so there's some similar aesthetic, and like, hey, you know, Jeff Watson guy, right? You know, and you know,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
you brought it. That's the
um,
bottom line.
well, I mean, I rode that off of enthusiasm for the opportunity, to have an opportunity to step out and play with those guys. So, I to this day say, that's where probably I had the most amount of learning, like in terms of just what it is to, be in a band and be a professional guitar player. I learned a lot from those guys, and they had a great 7-year run with them, and before moving on to Whitesnake, and which also has been, fantastic. And
Right.
there's, many, many great things I can say about that experience in terms of, what that did for me. I think the main thing that a lot of people in the States don't recognize is that Night Ranger does a lot of US, and then they would do like Japan. When a record came out, we'd maybe do like a one-off in the UK or something. But Whitesnake kind of had, Europe, UK, Australia, South America.
Right.
And so, when you join that type of band, maybe you're not just doing the fly date thing around the US and people don't see as often here, but it really helped me become known like in, other areas. So, and obviously, getting an opportunity to work with David and Tommy Aldridge,
Right.
these iconic figures and killer catalog of music, man. I mean, to this day, like that 2016 Greatest Hits tour, that's like the coolest set list I've ever had a chance to play. I mean, it was like every single song was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe this. Like every song on this set list is
Yeah, like you're one of the people who are just fortunate enough because of your talent, of course, and you're a nice guy and you're easy to travel with. Everyone likes to work with you. What is it like when you're up there? And like when you were up there at Night Ranger, how many times were you hanging out on the weekend somewhere? You could still rock in America, and then like all these songs that you that we grew up with.
yeah.
How does that feel for you to be the guy out there?
I used to have like, out of the guitar magazines, take out the full page picture of the guitar player you admired. And I had like a talk, thing that the thumbtack, pop them up or whatever. And I had Brad and Jeff were two of the guys that were up there,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was surreal to join that at the time and just be like, wow, and that's in many ways been the story of my career ever since that moment of kind of like Peter. It kind of began that with me playing with these guys who I grew up like admiring and looking at like they were, like that was, where I grew up. That's totally unattainable.
Right.
Like, age with like famous people seems like I can't believe this is happening, and so. Night Ranger brought that to the next level because that was like, look, you're in this band with us. I mean, technically you're a hired sideman, but like, you're treated like you're part of the band. So that was a big opportunity, and those guys were great, and David as well. I mean, David's really just like been the greatest boss over this time. I mean, technically still Whitesnake. I mean, we're in a holding pattern and not really doing anything, but being a part of working with him has been great. We have a great working relationship and bit of a friendship. I dare to say as well. I mean, he's been really good to me. Like aside from the work thing, just like really, really cool and solid and great person to work with.
And it's funny, Joel, when we have guests on, mostly singers, and we kind of ask who are some of your influences or who you consider some of the best singers out there, they always mention Coverdale, and he's always mentioned. And I think you almost forget about what an incredible singer he is, but I think people in the industry realize what an amazing voice he has.
Yeah, in his prime, I mean, Mount Rushmore of rock singers, no question. Just like
absolutely
amazing. In that, my favorites when people have push me on it as far as like those rock singers. I mean, you got to go Steve Perry, and you got to go like Paul Rogers and Lou Gramm in his prime, and Ronnie James Dio and David Coverdale. Man, it's like those are like those kind of like holy crap kind of singers. And
and I always like to ask the question. We mentioned Mount Rushmore. Who's your Mount Rushmore of lead singers? And I always say Halford, Tate, Dio, Sebastian Bach. Oh, wait,
See, now
Michael
you-
Sweet. I
now
gotta put
you-
him on there. I gotta.
You make me
It's
upset. I didn't
impossible to
mention.
name really four.
You know, Jeff Tate really, Queensryche was really always big for me. Somebody gave me their EP when I was in junior high.
Unbelievable.
I think I was in 7th grade at the time, and somebody said, "You got to check this band out." So I was into Queensryche starting like from the jump, man, from the
Yeah.
EP.
Me too. Me too.
Queen of the Reich, and then I was way into the Warning and Rage for Order and Mindcrime, and that's kind of where things peaked for me.
Right.
You know, Mindcrime was just so ridiculously good.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
You know, one of the best hard rock albums ever made, really. You know, and
Absolutely.
so
It's a masterpiece.
Always-
Absolute masterpiece. Yeah.
I always had like a little bit of a prog side to me. I was, you know, definitely into Rush and everything that Rush did. And I really loved the Trevor Rabin era Yes stuff too. And it's like real cool to say you're into the old Yes, but like the stuff I grew up with was kind of, you know, the like Big Generator, like wearing that record cassette, let's be honest, the cassette out of Big Generator and listen to that over and over. You know, I think Trevor Rabin's like so underrated. He's just a, you know, genius player, singer, writer, producer. You know, doesn't often get mentioned in that guitar hero category, but I think that's just because he's such an amazing overall musician. You know, he's just so well rounded. It's not about like check out how fast I play. You know, he's just an amazing guitar. So.
One of the cool things, you know, we just went through, you know, we had a few years ago where everyone was dealing with the plague, and so everyone was locked down and stuff, and you know, like a lot of bad things happened to people, but guys like you was so cool that boom, you guys were doing like jams, and like people needed that cool thing, and you guys, like you and all your buddies would get together, boom, you know, Jane. Your cover of Jane.
Oh my God.
You know, oh my God. Like,
Yeah,
I love that song to begin with. Then I heard that and it gave me, like, I freaked out. And, like, I still listen to that thing, like, probably 5 times a week because it is so good. Unbelievable.
So, thank you. I mean, that's really, Dino Jalusic actually really produced that one and was the person to, you know, organize it and ask me to play on it. It was, you know, one of those things that became when it became clear that we weren't talking about like, you know, oh, this is just going to be a couple weeks or something, like, oh, this is going to be like a long haul thing. I just started looking at like, look, what can I do to be productive and still keep things going? So I just kind of opened up like a roster of like virtual students, taught, kept me on my guitar. It was weird because I had done all that teaching back in the pro-am days, and when things took off, like performing wise, I stopped entirely teaching. And then so suddenly I like just dove back in. I'm like, let's see how this goes. And turns out, you know, there was a lot of interest in people taking lessons from me. So I took on like 30 students a week basically and did that. And I had a lot of people were recording and asking me to play guest solos, a lot of sessions. I started that cameo thing that everybody does now. And I was like, hey, you know, this is an opportunity to obviously like generate income when everybody else, you know, is, you know, stagnant, and also just keep me on my guitar. You know, like I got the Running Games album done from Joel Hoekstra's 13. You mentioned my side project, so thank you for that during that time. And then the collab jams, you know, and that was, you know, Jane. I remember doing that like after a teaching day or something like that, like late at night, and I just was like thinking, man, I could probably get better down. You know, I recorded it and I was like, I could have done better, but I'm cashed. I'm like, I might live to regret turning this in because I was like, you know, I'm like, this might get it might get some views, you know, Mike Portnoy and Dino Jalusic, and I'm thinking,
absolutely.
But I don't think any of us would have imagined to have over a couple million views.
That's amazing version, like, man. I mean, it's just mind blowing.
So, you know, I ended up,
it was
that one with Dino, and Dino asked me to do the 4-play long time one as well. And then because of seeing like, hey, wow, those get some attention. I did a couple that I produced as well, like that Stormbringer remake, which we did at the time for, it was, I forget the name of the benefit, but it was for crew members that were out of work at the time. Did that. It puts the version of Stormbringer together with Dino and Tony Franklin and Virgil Donati. And just that to me that came out great. And then I ended up doing Abracadabra with Arnel Pineda.
Yeah, that's another great one, man.
And that was one where I just Arnel and I always got along great, and Night Ranger did a lot of work with Journey, even prior to the 2011 tour, which we did a long time, a lot of touring that year together. We had done shorter tours, and Arnel was just always, we just got along, and so it's like, man, it'd be so great in some way, shape, or form to jam, and that provided the perfect opportunity because it's like, look, we're not doing this for any kind of money, we're not releasing this commercially, there's nothing to worry about. Like he didn't have to worry about, having Journey get pissed off or anything like that, or I didn't have to worry about, it was just like you said, man, strictly like a gift to the fans during that time, and a chance to, for me to check a couple people off that list of like, man, why haven't I ever worked with that person? Like somehow I met Billy Sheehan a bunch of times, but I'd never gotten to do anything with Billy Sheehan. It's like. Yeah. It was, and Mike Portnoy at the time, believe it or not, even with that Jane one, it was like I had never done anything with Mike. Met him a gazillion times. We each played with a gazillion bands and do a bunch of stuff, and we'd never done anything together. And I'm like,
it would just be an assumption that you guys played together. It's kind of like, guys are, you know what I mean?
So stuff like that was like just fun for me to put like a little check mark on the list. Yeah. Like, yes, I did something with that person, So, and again, that's been a lot of the story of my career. It's just, working with a lot of my people that, that's like heroes to me in unattainable.
Well, I have to tell you, from the public's view, man, we couldn't thank all you guys and ladies who did all those videos during that time for people who were stuck in, locked in. It was the everyday, man, who's next, There was today it's Sammy, then it's you guys. It was so cool to have that. And, I was having a rough time. My brother he had PTSD. The show's founded, so he committed suicide. So every day, these things were so important to me because I'm taking care of my mom. And every day, we were gifted with a new, take. And it's always cool to see your heroes play their heroes' music. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it was, it was an interesting period. I feel like, I kind of kicked its ass, to be honest, in terms of being presented with that challenge. And, my main thing is always just to work. Work creates work, and the more you just get after stuff, the more, you get rewarded. And sometimes in music, people ignore the simplest formula, it just comes down to that, as opposed to people think they put too much on that natural talent or luck. It's to me, it's always had to do more with no, just get the work done, because so many musicians are you give a guitar player a thing and I'll play on it, and 6 months later you're like, hey, well,
Right. One of the things I wanted to ask you, to explain to people, what it actually takes, a lot have the wrong idea of what it actually takes. They think once they get the thing, it's all sunshine and roses. No. It's character, integrity, showing up on time, being in shape, have your chops up, easy to travel with, show up and execute. There's a lot going on there.
And, I think that a lot of people look at, because they're staring at a day job, and then they view music as this boy, if I could only get there, I wouldn't have to work. I wouldn't have this lousy job or whatever. And what they don't understand is that when you get into it, it's you got to work about 4 or 5 times harder than the normal person who does go to college, gets the degree, gets the day job, and they live in the civilized world where they get paid sick days and paid vacation days. And I refer to rock and roll working in this as the Wild West, man. I mean, where none of that means anything to us,
Oh, exactly. And, when I read that, what he's going to be playing with, I'm like, dude, you know how much work, like what's the, how many what's your playlist in your head? It's got to be at least 1,000. It's
Oh, it was pretty crazy, but amount of work to like prepare for Accept, because there was initially like Wolf sent over like a live show, which was awesome because I had track separation like in Pro Tools, so I was able to isolate Phil's guitar track and his backing vocal and go, all right, this is what I need to sing and play. But I started learning, and then Wolf hadn't put together the set list I started with them in South America. And the agreement was, hey, do Latin America with us and the European festivals. Okay, cool. Sounds great. Both of those sound like great ideas. Hadn't been to Latin America since 2019 with Whitesnake. Amazing fans down there at the festivals. Those are ginormo and really cool. The year before, I was so bummed to not be a part of that at all. And so sounded great to me, but I started learning these songs. Then Wolf went, oh yeah, you learned those? Yeah, those probably won't be in the set, that kind of thing. And I went, man, okay. So then you get the set, and it's 2 hours of music because we were headlining, and it was like, oh my gosh, I've got a lot of songs to learn. And then for the festivals, he likes different selections because certain songs work better as headliner songs than casual fan songs. Festivals, what people maybe sometimes don't piece together is like you get that huge audience, but there's only a certain percentage of people that really are like the diehard Accept fans that know all the material. So you try and get stuff that is going to fit more into their wheelhouse. So bottom line is learn more songs for that. And, by the end, I think I probably ended up learning something like 36 Accept songs or something like that. And then you get into rehearsals and, you get thrown all the choreo thrown at you. Like, hey, when we do the verse to this song, we all take our guitar necks and we do this. And like, it's like I was growing eyes out of like, my entire head trying to keep an eye on what Wolf was doing so I could match him and, make it feel like an Accept show. And that was my only goal there. A lot of people were like, hey, you're not going to get a lot of solos. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to go to get out and jam with these. For me, that was just about making an Accept show feel like an Accept show for people, and going in and I had a ball with that, playing all the riffs and stuff like that. Like I genuinely don't need guitar solos to make me happy. It's like that's it's I get that. I got that in a couple interviews, and I said, well, I did the Cher gig. How many guitar solos do you think I did on that? So
that's really cool that you toured with Cher too.
And that's usually where people go, oh yeah, I guess that's true. You're probably playing rhythm guitar about 98% of the time. I was like, yes, exactly. And I just want to play music and like kind of be in the real world with music, and be out. And no matter what you're doing with that stuff, you're bettering yourself. I don't care if it's, rhythm guitar or I just want to play music on a high level with people that I enjoy being around and, talented people.
And like playing acoustic notes.
Yeah. And been doing a lot playing with Brandon Gibbs. And that's something that, started years ago when we met on the Monsters of Rock cruise. And he asked me if I'd ever be into doing that, and kind of like downtime between touring with Whitesnake and Cher and Trans-Siberian, go have an open weekend, go play a couple gigs that year, maybe, handful of gigs. Maybe we do 5 or 6 shows or something like that. And then it's really just kind of gotten legs, which is like shocked us. We've gone over to the UK and toured it twice, and gone over to Europe and toured there. And, just actually right now, I'm just back from doing a 4-day run in Colorado with him. And we have an upstate New York run happening, Monsters on the Mountain, which is sort of like the land version of the Monsters of Rock cruise, right? That coming up with him. We're opening for Gene Simmons. We opened for Winger, and it's kind of like, wow. I mean, we're just kind of like 2 friends who went out to do this for fun. I mean, that's all is to it. Brandon's a nice, chill guy, talented guy, sings well, plays guitar well, and like, no crew, no band. So we don't need a lot of money. Sound checks are 5-10 minutes long. Plug your guitars and. Yeah.
So, and then it's not always just the intimate settings. If you're opening for Gene Simmons or this Monsters on the Mountain, I mean, you do play it from some larger crowds then with the duo.
I mean, that's what started to happen, and that's what's kind of crazy about it. Is like it's like, wow, I mean, I didn't really see any of that coming with it. Neither did Brandon, but we're just kind of riding the wave of that. And it's, for me, I look at those gigs like, what's cool about that is, yeah, you know, you might be playing like a small place and you might be playing for a small crowd, but the people that turn out at those tend to be the ones that, from the really big gigs, actually care about what you're doing or into your music and your career. Because sure, I can get out and play like for 10,000 people with Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but not all of those 10,000 people know your name, know who you are, care about what it is you're doing, are listening to your music, following your career at all. You know, there's a lot of disconnect there. People just think, well, because you're playing for that big crowd, you must be famous. But it's really Trans-Siberian Orchestra that's famous. Let's be honest. That's the name people put their buying to see. And rightfully so. And I'm so grateful to be a part of TSO, man. I mean, what an amazing opportunity that gig is.
They keep a lot of great musicians.
The talent pool in that thing is just unreal, dude. I mean, like, so those that don't know, I mean, basically that started as the band Sabotage.
Yeah, man. What a great band.
Paul Neal was the mad scientist that had this creation, that had this idea. And I think it left a lot of people raising their eyebrows and scratching their heads going, you really think this is going to work? And, you know, Paul really put his heart and soul into that. And, you know, he lived for Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And,
and only he could have done it.
It became popular enough that it was like, okay, well, how are we going to cover the entire United States close to the holidays? Because you can't have a Christmas show in August, man. So it's like, all right, let's take Sabotage and let's kind of split them two ways. We'll have an East band and a West band, and then we'll get additional people to round out those bands. And I'm one of those additional people. You know, I mean, essentially, it's like Sabotage split two ways, get these other musicians to you know, build out the band, and you know, it's just an amazing opportunity. And as the years go by, you see a lot of the 80s bands and the bands I grew up watching getting older, retiring, you know, unable to do it, you know, and Trans-Siberian Orchestra were out doing 8 shows a week, arena shows. I mean, to get out and play for 10,000 people 8 times a week during that time period is like, dude, you can't, to have that opportunity is amazing. And then, of course, over the years, you know, you spend 2 months out of the year every time with these people, and they're, you know, my best friends. It's like you do that over that course of time, and you spend 2 months on a bus with them out of the year every year, and they, you know, we just have a great bond. And the fans, you know, typically we've had the signing lines where you get to know, despite the magnitude of it, the diehard fans, you really get to know them, and they're your friends. And so yeah, it's just that's been an amazing thing for me, the Trans-Siberian gig too. That's been 2010.
And for our generation, it's our Nutcracker.
Yeah,
You know, like
I mean,
when we were kids, we'd go to Nutcracker Suite every year, and like everyone, boom, TSO's coming, you know.
Well, they usually have me do the you know, radio interviews leading into that. They give me like a little talking point sheet, and you know, it really hit me heavily last year. I mean, it's hit me at times before that, but like, you know, Paul's vision was to have this be a tradition and a Christmas tradition, and it's like going through that sheet last year, I'm like, dude, we're there. Like, I mean, we are like, we are a Christmas tradition for North America, for certainly the United States, you know?
Absolutely.
It's like, you know, it's everywhere on the radio. You're playing for, you know, and usually it's over 1 million people by the time you've gone to both. And, you know, did Good Morning America, and, you know, they talk about, you know, this Sarajevo's now I forget what number, X amount of streamed, like top streamed song of all time for the holiday music. It's like, it's, you know, one of the top streamed songs for holiday music of all time. And it's like, it's incredible to think. And
how does the vibe differ when you're playing TSO show? Because, you know, it's family, you know, you have families, and like, is there a different vibe?
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely, man. You know, a lot of it has to do with like, channeling emotions and expressions. Like, you know, Night Ranger, you know, I used to always think, okay, you know, scowl when you're playing for the guys, and then for the girls, you smile, you know? And I was doing too much scowling joining TSO because we're playing some kind of heavy stuff, and I'm scowling and I'm looking out. I'm going, oh my god, I'm scaring the crap out of a 7-year-old kid. So maybe do away with some of that, and so it was a little bit of an adjustment. That and with TSO, there was an adjustment where you realize, well, the lead vocalist, they get like 1 or 2 songs, and they're telling a story. And so, you got to learn during the story end of things and those particular songs not to be so animated. It's like, stay in your lane, so to speak, right? I was not used to that with Night Ranger. Night Ranger, we were like, it was very much like how Kelly Kagi set up stage left facing inward. So the deck was open, and Jack Blades and Brad Gillis never stopped. They're just like animated and, very animated performers. And so I'm on stage with them, and I learned early on, okay, I better match them. Otherwise, it's like a dead part of the stage. No one's going to care about me. So, I haven't learned the off switch until I, was like, okay, learn that off for this part of the show. And so it took a little adjusting. And, Whitesnake kind of brought back, I would say, more of the Night Ranger thing. I would say it's David kind of likes everybody in their area being very animated. It wasn't as open deck as Night Ranger. It was a lot of like running around the stage with Night Ranger. With Whitesnake, it's kind of like you've got your area, be entertaining in it, which is like TSO. And David kind of, prowls the stage around us and works the stage. And that's kind of the way it works there. And, perfect with Accept because, German band, that everything is more about the choreographed sync, like group choreography. So, I needed to figure out on the fly, like a balance of figuring out a way to still be myself a bit and do some things here and there, but also meet all of that, And that was a learning curve for me too. Every gig's got stage presence learning curve, bottom line, you go into it, it's like, okay, you got to figure out the music and also just how to present it the best.
Yeah. The stagecraft.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Accept, I love all that stuff that they do. When I took Wolf, I on the Monsters of Rock cruise, there's sometimes you get a lot of bands that maybe that's their only gig that year, or they're just playing here and there. And what I liked about watching Accept on the cruise is that you could tell that they're a real band and they're gigging all the time because they do the moves together. Right. So they're doing all this stuff together and they go to the mics at the same time. You go, all right, there's a band,
Right.
And so I like that. And I wanted people to feel that when they'd come to see me, even sitting in with them, that I could plug in and be part of the band. And so that was really the goal. And that's hard because that's really, you're trying to slip in and fill like an entire vibe, not like
it's ingrained in them.
Hey man, I'm going to do me. It's like the goal is to have it feel just like an Accept show. Only I happen to be in there playing guitar.
Right. Yeah, like Rudy Sarzo, when he was on, he said, he goes, and when I was playing with Ozzy, Sharon told me, stay in your 4 foot by 4 foot box. Do not leave it.
Yeah.
And because I tell him, I said, that probably made you a better performer, because when he came out at the time, you remember, he was like no other bass player you ever saw on a screen.
Absolutely. All the going over and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very entertaining. Very, very entertaining.
Yeah, and we just saw Rudy with Quiet Riot, Vince and I, during the summer. And he was every inch of the stage. He was all over the place. He said, "Screw that 4x4." I want to ask you a quick, Joel, on the Monsters of Rock. I have never been on one of those cruises, and we've talked about going out for some years. A lot of our friends have been on there.
Shame on you.
So
it's killer.
When you're on there, so when you're on there, you're just kind of, when you're not playing, you're just kind of hanging with the fans and swimming and having a beer. And is that
that's the best part of that cruise is there's so many bands on that cruise. So there's at any given time like 3-4 concerts happening. Like, where do you want to go? You want to go hang out here? You can kind of just float around. And then also because there's so many bands, I don't know what percentage it is, but a lot of the people on the cruise are the people in the bands.
Right.
So walking down the hallway, you're going to bump into, Michael Sweet or whatever, know, and that's kind of the way it is even for us, because, we don't, just because you find some success in a band or in bands or whatever, like I have, doesn't mean I lose my admiration for the other musicians that do this stuff. It's still, like, being able to bump into your heroes and people that you admire, and it leads to sometimes really, cool things, having all those artists on board together, like not this past cruise, but the one before. Nuno Betancourt hit me up and was like, hey, would you want to do this acoustic Gabby Ray? And he said, I'm going to be playing djembe. And I said, so you're asking me to play guitar for you, and Gabby, and you're not going to be playing guitar? Wow, this is weird. And so, and I was up in production. We were going to rehearse in Nuno's cabin, and there was a moment where the djembe was up in production, and Nuno's texting going, I can't find the djembe. I don't know, where it is on the boat or whatever. I'm like, I'm right here with it. I'm like, I'm headed to your cabin now, dude, for this rehearsal. I just remember going down the hallway. I got my acoustic on my back, and I'm rolling a djembe down the hallway. And I'm thinking, this is like, when they say life is stranger than fiction, I mean, that's weirder than any weird dream you could have. You're going to rehearse with Nuno Betancourt, and you're going to be the guitarist, and he's going to be playing djembe. Well, okay, all right.
Oh man, their new album.
I saw too.
Amazing.
You guys all played basketball together too, right?
Yeah, that was something that I kind of had started that up because one year I went up and just was playing 1-on-1 or even 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 with the cruisers. People that were just on the cruise, and the bond was completely different than like a meet and greet or something that. Because we're just, you reduce any guy from a stage to that level. I mean, we're just people like to say, oh, Joel, you're good at basketball. I suck. I'm just like an old guy playing basketball, But I'm like, being out there and shooting, and it just made us like friends, not like a meet and greet, like, hey, buddy,
right.
Just, but like a real, so I went to Larry and I said, hey, man, this basketball thing is really cool because. So I said, maybe we should do a thing where people can sign up to play me 1-on-1 or something. He's like, I love that idea. That sounds like a great idea. Something very unique and fun. And so it started with that, but then some other people that were coming on to play hoops too, some of the artists, and they got word. And so Richie Kotzen and Jeff Scott Soto. And so I was getting these texts from Larry being like, hey, they want in too. I said, cool, maybe we can make it a 3-on-3 or something like that. Or, and then lo and behold, it was it turned into a full 5-on-5 thing. The first year we did it, I think just ran half court. And then the second year we did it, we had uniforms and we ran full court. And then the last year we had it, we didn't do it since Nuno got hurt in the last game. And it was kind of talked about well, hey, what now? I was like, well, now that happened, nobody's going to want to do this, right. But I still would get out there and do the 1-on-1 thing with people if they wanted. I think, it's still, it's still cool, but it was really, really, really weird and bizarre to be like, wow, I have a basketball team right now comprised of Gary Sharon, Nuno Betancourt, Richie Kotzen, Doug Aldrich, and myself.
That's hilarious, man.
This is just
you bring up Jeff Scott Soto. Now, he's one of my favorite rock and roll voices of all time. Everything he's on, he's just, and so thank you for giving us the Soto report. This has been an ongoing thing. We're hopefully that one day he'll see this because we talk about Soto all the time, and maybe he'll actually come on.
Oh my gosh, I'm surprised. Jeff is the ultimate pro, and another one of those guys that kind of gave me an opportunity before things had, I guess, fully taken off or at least to where they are now. I was playing a Night Ranger, and he asked me about co-writing with him for Damage Control, and I got kind of lucky that my first idea with him, That Look Inside Your Heart, was picked as the first single. from that record, and made a video with him back then. And Jeff and he sings backups on all of the Joel Hoekstra's 13 stuff. Just kind of we're tight friends. He obviously and he sang lead on the first album on half of it as well. But I mean, he's overqualified to sing the backing vocals, but it's like one of those things where, man, I could do this, or I could get Jeff Scott Soto to do it, which is going to make the album sound better. I'm like, right. Probably having Jeff Scott Soto do the harmonies is going to be making this album sound better. So, and that's all I want with those Joel Hoekstra's 13 albums. Great sounding albums.
Yeah, we covered a couple of songs from it this time around. That we've also covered Iconic. We've covered Jane. We've covered you a ton, Jeff a ton. But we do have a couple of questions from our Facebook page. Malika Markovic asks you, where do you get so much energy, which even those much younger than you do not have on stage?
Desperation.
Like, do you run? Do you do cardio? Do you what? Just eat well?
I've been in a really bad phase for all of that. There was a long period of time where I was like amazing with that, where I worked out every day for about 7 years, and I've been in a really bad phase of that the last couple of years, because like I just have gotten to the point where I have so much playing responsibilities, and a lot of that was me adding in the virtual teaching too.
Sure.
So I'm less active with exercise than I should be. I need to get myself like back in it. But a lot of that is just that I'll legit have stretches where I'm like, dude, you're looking at like 8 to 10 hours a day of guitar for like a couple months straight, wow. And there's not a lot of downtime to be like, let's hit the gym, let's work out, so it's, the guitar takes priority over that for me. It's like that's first and foremost. But I need to get myself.
We mentioned it earlier, in the intro. I can't even imagine what your schedule book looks like. You're a busy dude. But it's cool to scroll. I'm like, oh, you stop, you see Hoekstra, you're gonna listen, you're gonna like it. You always know that, and that's a great.
I kind of just lay it out like in a little thing on my desktop, on my laptop. I don't even necessarily have it in iCal. I just have the dates, and then I even just anytime a flight is booked, I put the confirmation number and the times of the flight, and just in my dates. It's very probably nowadays considered old school. And then what's neat is every year I'll have that on my desktop, like 2024 dates, and then I'll just at the end of the year pop it in past dates, so I can open up. I kind of have the real text format. So I do it in just RTF because I don't do a lot of work.
So how far in advance are you scheduled? Because we had Michael Sweet on. He's like, in Striper's about 2 years out ish.
Oh, I got like some bookings for 2025 right now, but not a ton. Like, I don't really know what that year looks like right now.
Gotcha. You're still in a holding pattern with
there's stuff being talked about, and there's it could fill up in a variety of ways. It's right. It's kind of like, for me, that having the virtual teaching thing is like, okay, so even if there's like time off, hey, I got the teaching thing. I can be doing recording and sessions for people, and that stuff you get very little notice. I'm always getting emails from people looking for me to play a solo on something or play on their song, or obviously, recording wise, I got Joel Hoekstra's 13 happening right now, and Iconic. There's an album that's kind of been stalled, but in the works there. So, it usually works out that there's some kind of albums that I do in a year, and. I'm just
so Michael Sweet's voice and guitar playing, but he's one of the best singers. The amount of creativity that comes out of that guy is just mind blowing.
Yeah, well, you brought him up right out of the gate with the work ethic thing, It's I think that's what a lot of it comes down to, just having that. With Michael, he has that because it's exercised constantly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you lay dormant and you don't do music for a year or two, it's harder to.
Right. That's why I never understood bands that didn't go on tour for 7 or 8 years. Like, are you in a band or not? I feel like it's
hard to get the ball rolling for those kind of people, and so for me, that staying constantly active like helps, I think,
Oh, for sure.
to on several fronts, just to like be active, be better on guitar. I mean, that's, people forget that. It's like it's not just about like, trying to be famous or make money, or it's a lot of it for me comes down to like I want like opportunities to like still get better on guitar, and I want to do it in a place that's not just me sitting alone at home practicing with a metronome,
Right.
looking for ways to do that in the real world where it's like you're making music.
Sure.
So, and some of that can happen virtually too. It doesn't, I'm not dead set against the whole like, virtual thing. Like you mentioned, I did the collabs, and I've even done some of those shred collabs where, I'm the guy to get invited to do a little 20-second shred solo. That's like a whole thing now, that whole shred on shred collab world. And, so I like that I can have my toes in the water there, and as a session guy, and I like being able to do stuff sometimes that's not shred. It can kind of be a drag at times that like every time you're expected to play like a fast solo or something like that. It's
because me and Fred yesterday we had lunch with Scott May, and he was saying like he walked in one day and you're playing he didn't know who was playing this jazz. He walked in and he's like, I didn't know you. Like a musician plays everything.
I mean, I kind of just had a long period before things took off. That I tell this story all the time, but I got out of GIT, and back then it was like the shred world. All the instrumental albums were happening. Surfing with the Alien, Passion and Warfare. Satch and Vi and Yngwie and all that. The shrapnel stuff. And then It Smells Like Teen Spirit came out pretty much like right when I graduated. And it was like, well, that's the end of that.
Yeah, we call that the band that shall not be named.
So now you need to like, find a way to make a living playing music, and as a guitarist to make yourself valuable beyond just the guy who has some chops on guitar. And so it was the best thing that ever happened to me in a lot of ways, because I ended up playing with all different kinds of bands, backing up all different kinds of people, barely ever leaning back on chops because nobody wanted guitar solos. And, it's so finding a way to make a living and make myself valuable during that period led to me really appreciating all types of guitar playing. Minimalist stuff is great. And I love, like I said, that's sometimes people think it's like, well, you're in Whitesnake, you must want I don't really ever need just like, the Guitar Hero, or it's more like just enjoy playing. Is that so
song?
Like, hey man,
yeah.
That was always the number one goal, man. Sorry, I think I got a hair in my mouth. That was always the goal over even just being like a rock star. Seemed like where I grew up, like that sounds like silly to say, and like it's probably not going to happen. So like, my mentality was pro guitarist. Like, I'll make my living playing guitar. Always knew I wanted to do that since I was 11. And that's what I set out to do. And then anything else, all this other stuff we were talking about, this is like, what people don't get is that's like icing on the cake for me.
Right. That's extra.
All I wanted to do was make my living playing guitar. That's it. So to have any of the opportunities I've had, like that's all like, thank you, man. Like this is incredible. Like to get that opportunity and that chance. And because ultimately, that's just my life's mission is just to like be a pro guitarist and get as good as I can on the thing. And
I mean, you're known as a really good guy, and that goes miles and miles on top of your talent. I mean, you just can't have a certain amount of talent, just be an a-hole and go everywhere. And, like everyone knows that you're a stand-up individual. You work hard, you service the song, and you melt people's faces when they come see you live. And speaking of which, Stephen Matthews asked, what is your favorite guitar that you use on stage?
I mean, my favorite guitar is my Gold Top Les Paul, which is the 57 reissue that I got. It's funny because it took me forever to get a Les Paul. Like, I mean, I grew up in the Floyd Rose era, like my very briefly had an Electro Westone that I started on, but I kind of went quickly to a Kramer Beretta. And then I had my next main guitar was a modified Phil Collin model Jackson that my friend Brett Garson had played in Nelson.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
Cool, but this is back before. It doesn't look like the PC ones now. It's kind of a small body, but Floyd Rose guitar. And then I kind of made, with Kathy's band, a Telly kind of was like the cool thing, and a Strat, more single coil stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She's playing more of like the bigger chord, Americana, kind of country at times, but blues, and I used to just think, well, Les Pauls, they just go out of tune all the time. Like what I want with that. And when I started doing Love Janis, I ended up getting an SG because Kathy had gotten this role as Janis Joplin in Love Janis. And so I thought, okay, the Big Brother and the Holding Company guys played SGs. I'll get an SG. And I was like, even though I know they go all out of tune all the time. And I thought, okay, cool. I thought, okay, I've gone this far and I kind of get it now with like the Gibson sound. And so go ahead and get a Les Paul. And then once I got like my 57 reissue Gold Top, it was like, there was something about getting that guitar where I was like, I'm kicking myself still to date going, you idiot, because it's like,
everything made sense.
It felt like really like home to me, like no other guitar ever has. And I'm 100% a Les Paul guy. Like that's what I feel at home playing. I totally play other stuff, pick up other guitars and play other guitars, with Accept. It was part of the Accept thing to play the V for sure. So Wolf, has a bunch of his Wolf Hoffman Vs. So you're seeing the pictures on the screen of me playing those. And look, that's integral to me, being a filling in with Accept at that time period. They're like making it feel right,
Yeah.
And those are great guitars. I mean, they really are. I actually really enjoyed playing them. They're a little easier to play than a Les Paul. A little thinner, and you can pick a little faster. And, great guitars. Those famous V's that Wolf has his model under. But Les Pauls they're just my thing. I fell in love with my first one, and I have a bunch of them, but that one for some reason has always remained my favorite. And I think it's just been the amount that it's done is staggering. Like if I told you like all the albums that I've played in, I pretty much like everything you guys know me for, that guitar has been a part of. I mean, it's done.
How many guitars do you have? It's in the 40s, isn't it? Or do you have more than that now?
Yeah, it's around like low 40s or something like that. I need to do an actual count someday. People keep asking me. I'm like, I actually don't know.
Right.
Low 40s.
Yeah. So I'm here on your website now. Imagine you're sitting in the music store, when you're first starting out, and someone's going to say, hey man, I'm from 2024 or 2025, whatever. And you've worked with Whitesnake, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Cher, Night Ranger, Revolution Saints, Iconic, Broadway's Rock of Ages Band, Foreigner, Accept the Turtles, Big Brother and the Holding Company, Jeff Scott Soda, Scrap Metal, Jim Pedrick, Gunnar and Matthew Nelson, Michael Sweet, Brandon Gibbs, Dee Snyder, Mickey Thomas, Don Bars, Amy Lee, Eric Martin, Kip Winger, Joan Jett, Rick Emmett, Sammy Hagar, Vince Neil, Brett Michaels, Tommy Shaw, Robin Zander, Derek St. Home. I'm not even halfway through. Pretty impressive, dude. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, on that bio, I like to, I try to list the people who I've spent the most time with up top, and the ones that were the more significant, not necessarily the biggest names, but like. Sure. I think it's kind of cool to have a log somewhere of like even the times I've gotten to step on stage with somebody and jam with them. Like earlier on the cruise this year, Joe Satriani asked me to get up with him and jam with him. And I mean, that's like, wow, dude, I used to have Not of This Earth on vinyl. Somebody hipped me to you before Surfing with the Alien. And I used to be Not of This Earth religiously on vinyl. Like, you're kidding me. Like, dude, you're making a dream come true by having me up. Like,
So with that amazing list, Joel, is there anybody that you haven't played with that you would love to collaborate with?
Yeah, but like who that would be specifically doesn't come to mind at the moment. It always comes down to people who are like talented and positive, but yeah, I mean there are people that come up from time to time where it's like, why? How come not that?
Right. That's interesting, right?
Why not that? Yeah, but I can't for the life of me come up with that person right now who that would be, but specifically, but just kind of anybody who's talented that is a cool person, you know. So, which usually if people are successful, they have an element of them that has it together. It's really hard to maintain or build a successful career as a total, jerk or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
you've been around for a while. There's a reason.
Yeah, at least some people might know how to turn it on and turn it off. Say, "Oh, this guy, I met this celebrity. He was an asshole or whatever." But sorry if I can't swear on your program. But
oh no, you can't.
Well, but that person, they might just have had like a bad day or a moment, and like, and the other person that meets him for that 5 seconds might be like, "That guy's the coolest guy I ever met in my life." So I mean, I try to.
Imagine you haven't felt good for 3 days. You go out to the Jewel or whatever to go grocery shopping, and someone stops you. You think you can get in, get out without because of the time of day you picked to go, and then you're like, ah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a pretty good place with that, where I get just about the right amount of that. Like, I was talking with somebody about this the other day. It's like I can go on that cruise, or I can go to Nam, and those are like two places where I feel like well known. I walk around and I've got a lot of people that recognize me, and it's like hey, I guess I'm kind of well known, and then but I can go around in general public and have absolutely nobody know who the heck I am, and so that's fine. Maybe I get recognized here and there at an airport or something like that, but like it's like a healthy level, and I think it must be really difficult to be really, really, really well known, be like a household name kind of person.
Prison. It has to be prison.
Yeah. So I got a pretty decent scene with that, where I appreciate it when somebody recognizes me, because I'm not annoyed by it. And,
I worked in film and television, and for years, and people, you would hear, oh, well, I saw so and so. Well, what were you doing? Oh, well, he was having dinner. You interrupted someone eating. Like, come on, man. Like, do you have any manners? Like, you know what I mean? Like, of course they're gonna do. They just want to enjoy their steak or their shrimp or their salad. Just
Yeah. Honestly, the only two places that I really have that are what we're talking about. We're on the cruise, and when I go to the NAMM show, which I did this year. I hadn't done it in a while, since like pre-COVID, and I was thinking, maybe things have chilled out a little bit. Like, maybe I'll go there, and I'm like the older guitarist now. Maybe people won't be but it was actually like worse than ever. I was like, and a lot of people like, dude, and it was like, wow, like it's a weird world, this whole rock world. You can feel like well known, or you can feel like absolutely nobody knows who you are simultaneously, or just from one moment to the next. It's a little bit more of a roller coaster than people working like a steady job and working through their lives and having that. Sure. And I used to ask Gillis about that, when we were touring in Night Ranger. I'd be like, how does that work, man? It's gotta be tough. Like, you're like literally the guy who took over for Randy Rhoads and played with Ozzy Osbourne. Most coveted guitar gig in the world at that time, and you got it. And then the next minute we're, in whatever, some airport somewhere, and he's not getting recognized, or nobody knows where he is, or somebody treats you like crap because you're carrying a guitar onto a plane or something like that. It's gotta be hard to deal with. You've had such extreme highs, and it's got to make the lows harder to deal with. And I have that to a degree. I think you get treated like a king at times, and then at other times, you're treated like you're dirt, and it's just kind of like you're constantly riding that roller coaster.
Exactly, but the catering's always good. But
so real quick on your band 13, a side project, the latest album, Crash of Life, which you did with, and I'm probably going to pronounce his name wrong, even though he's one of my favorite lead singers, Girish Pradhan.
Girish Pradhan is what I've been saying, so I hope that's right.
He's amazing.
He's an amazing vocalist, and so you got anything in the works for another 13 coming out?
Yeah. So the way that these work is that usually I lay down the guides for Vinny Appice to play to, and that's just kind of the stage it's at right now. Just the very early stage. It's sadly, it's taken a back seat to all the other stuff this year. It's like I've been constantly going, and it's like, man, I gotta have some time to like actually get like. So the way I do my writing a lot of times is I'll just do it with the iPhone recording, and I'll not even with the guitar plugged in half the time,
Right.
just like come up with the riffs, come up with the song, sing a melody, something like that while I'm doing it, and so usually come up with a form. And then so that's idea one. And so I come up, with the ideas. And now what has to happen is I got to get those laid down in Pro Tools for Vinny to play too. And that gets the ball rolling, and then it becomes, official, like that it's in the works.
Yeah. I'm glad you said his last name right, because we had him on and I pronounced it wrong, and he let me have it too.
You gotta love that sibling rivalry there. The fact that they say the first name two different ways.
Oh, totally.
I know. And Vince and I both had it on a card, Apathy, and I still call him a piece. And right away he goes, "It's Apathy," and boy, he let me have
Vinny,
it.
I even had it like written out for him, like.
So I will see you. Hopefully, you'll be with the TSO in Chicago when you come around this year.
It's probably gonna be the West Band. Lately it's been the West Band in Chicago every year, and I'm in the East Band. But hopefully something else. Hopefully, I'm usually through Chicago with something. Sooner or later, I'll be there.
Well, I got a date to put on your calendar, September 7th. Accept's coming to Des Plaines Theater in Des Plaines with KK's Priest. I got tickets for that. So if you can give Wolf a call and see if you can pop in for that show, that'd be nice. I'd love to see you with Wolf up there.
Right.
I think I'm off the night they're coming to New York City with that tour, and I'll probably go hang out that night.
Nice.
When they're down. Yeah, I mean, it's so weird when you go fill in with a band, because you go through a lot of that stuff we're talking about, the hard times, and you develop a bond. So it's like, I feel real tight with those guys. Like, it's like,
I gotta tell you a quick little balls to the walls story for Accept. There's a bar that I go to across the street from my house, and I got to know the bartender there pretty good. And they have the touch tones where you can control it off your phone. So every time I walk in, I always hit balls to the wall. And that comes on to, the loudspeakers, and everyone goes, "Oh, Fred's here, balls to the wall's playing." So one day our server said, "That would make a good shot." And I go, "It would." So she invented the balls to the wall shot, and it was delicious. So about 2 weeks later, and they actually put it on the menu, so you can actually order a balls to the wall shot. So about 2 weeks later, Accept was in town at the Arcada Theater in St. Charles, and I had a meet and greet. So I pulled Wolf and Robert aside, and I told them the story about the balls to the wall shot, and I videotaped me telling them that. Of course, they laughed and got a kick out of it. So the next day I went back to the bar, and I told Jen, our bartender, I go, "Hey, your shot made it." And I said, "Here's the band." And I showed her the video, and she was so thrilled. She goes, "Oh my God." She was so thrilled that her shot is now known to the band.
That's so cool. I love it.
If you're ever in the area, Joel, we'll get you out. We'll do a balls to the wall shot.
All right, so you can still see Joe Hoekstra and Brandon Gibbons. Tickets still on sale, Joe?
Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, all that stuff. I'll be mainly with Brandon this month, and then in September is going to be a lot of like doing the TSO press, teaching and recording. And then October, there's going to be Brandon and I have a run in Florida, and I'm doing a lot of stuff with Broadway's Rock of Ages band in October. Like I think I have about 6 or 7 shows with them in various places, and then I go to TSO rehearsals, and then begin the whole machine begins for November, December, really with that. So
I've seen that Rock of Ages a couple of times on Broadway here in Chicago. It is so much fun. What a great show.
The show itself is a great time, and then what this is just the band from that show just playing the song. So it's a little bit more of like you're going to just see the band essentially just play.
So it's not the actual play. Okay.
It's not the actual show, but that I did here for 6 years on Broadway. So it's us. It's anybody who was a part of the Broadway show, and then we got a special bond too. When you play together damn near every day for 6+ years, all the people in that band. It's like
sure.
Boy, we played a lot of shows together, man. So I think somewhere about 1,800 for me or something like that times I played that show. So it's like, you know, Bill Murray and Groundhog Day.
Right.
I always hate it for the listener when these get long because I go, who's going to want to watch me talk for this long? So,
well, thank you, Joel, so much. We appreciate your time, man. It's been fun. Been looking forward to talking to you for years and years, and it's always good to see a Chicago guy do well, and you deserve every ounce of it, really.
thanks so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate
so
your
much.
time. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So everyone,
Thanks.
go check out what Joel's got offering. Go buy some merch and definitely get some tickets. Buy all the music that he's on, of course. And we'll see you guys next time on Creativity Talk.